Okay, we're going to start 6.2. We are going to sketch the graph of a parabola. So again, we're looking for that squared. That means it's a parabola. And we're going to use the x-intercepts. So sometimes this is called factored form. Okay, so that means that we need to remember how to factor. So here it says very important required knowledge. So if I gave you this equation last unit, you would have found the roots or the zeros by factoring. Yes, there were equations that would have had coefficients out front, but in grade 10, we're just going to focus on ones where the a value is 1 when you have to factor. Okay, so that makes your life a little bit easier. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to -6 and add to +1. So we have 1 and 6. That's not going to get us there. But we could do 2 and 3. So 2 times 3 is 6. If one of them is going to be negative and one of them is going to be positive, if we want to end up with +1, then the 3 should be negative. So now we have x minus 2 and x plus 3. Okay, so that will be your first step. When you solve, then y is 0. We're looking for the x-intercepts, which is where the parabola crosses the x-axis. So when y is 0. So if you remember doing this, if the one bracket is 0 or the other bracket is 0, then you're going to get two values. So here, again, we're not trying to be tricky in grade 10. So when the question says graph using the x-intercepts, then you can assume the equation is factorable. There should be two x-intercepts. You don't have to worry about, trying to use a quadratic formula or whatever. We're going to look at a different way. So when we get to 6.4, which is called completing the square, and that will help us with equations that are a little bit more complicated. Okay, so for now, we're just going to solve for x. So we get 2 and -3. So those are the x-intercepts or the 0. One more thing about standard form. So when an equation has a c value, then that is going to tell us the y-intercept. So if you forget, the y-intercept is when x is 0. So if you plug in this equation, a 0, wherever you see an x, then you're going to end up with the c value. So we did do that in the last lesson as well. Okay, so the y-intercept is that c value at the end. I'll write that down. So that can tell us where the parabola is going to cross the y-axis, sorry. But that doesn't really help us with the vertex or anything like that. So really what you're going to see is that the y-intercept is a valid piece of information, but we're going to focus more on what's the step pattern and can we find the vertex, which we're going to use the x-intercepts for today. So remember, the basic step pattern is 1 times the a value, 3 times the a value, 5 times the a value, and then depending on the graph, 7 times the a value. So if the a value is 2, so a is the number before the x squared term, then we would do 1 times 2, 3 times 2, 5 times 2, 7 times 2, 2, 6, 10, and 14. If the a value is negative, the parabola opens down. So we're still going to use all of those pieces that we've been collecting as we're going through this unit. Okay, so we need these background pieces of information, but really what we're going to do today is graph a quadratic using the vertex and the x-intercepts. So again, where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, so we did quadratics in the form ax squared and ax squared plus a c value, where the vertex can be shifted up or down, and the y-axis is the axis of symmetry. The next thing that we're going to look for is horizontal. So when it is shifted or translated along the x-axis. So you can see this yellow one here, y equals 4x squared minus 4. It is just shifted down for the vertex, but the other two parabolas, which are a little bit more complicated, they are shifted left of the y-axis and right of the y-axis. And so the y-axis is no longer the axis of symmetry. So that's what we're moving towards. So today we're going to do how we can figure out where the parabola has shifted based on x-intercepts, and then or factored form. And then the next lesson will be called, we'll be looking at using what we call vertex form of an equation. Okay. So whenever you're going to graph a parabola, you need the vertex and you need the step pattern. So when you have an equation in standard form, say like this one, this pink one down here, you can tell what the step pattern is because the a value is the number out front of the x squared, but you can't tell what the vertex is. So we have to manipulate that equation. So today we're going to be able to factor. And then in 6.4, we're going to have to do something brand new called completing the square. If you are the kind of person who likes to use steps, then you can do these 4 steps every single time, and they should be in order, okay? So in order to determine the x-intercepts, which is step 1, you have to factor, and you're looking for the roots or zeros, or that's what we would have called them last unit. And we're going to use the x-intercepts to determine the x-coordinate of the vertex. I'll show you how to do that. It's actually not too bad. And then once we have the x value, then all we're going to do is sub it back into the equation to solve for the y value. So sub x in to solve for y. And then then we'll have the vertex. So the vertex will be the x from step number 2 and the y from step number 3. Okay? And then the step pattern we can use the original standard form equation for. Okay? So let's go through the steps. Okay, so here we have the equation x squared plus 6x plus 8. So we have to find the x-intercepts. So this is step number 1, which means we are going to factor. And again, we're not trying to trick you in grade 10, so you can assume that it is going to be factorable, okay? So we're going to do what numbers multiply to 8 and add to 6. So we have 1 and 8. And then 2 and 4, those add to 6. So we have x plus 4, x plus 2. If you did this in your head and wrote x plus 2 and then x plus 4 in the second bracket, that actually does not matter, okay? Now we need to find the x-intercepts. So we are looking for when is y going to be 0? So we want either of these brackets to equal 0. I don't know why I wrote it on that side. You can write it on the right. So x is going to be -4 and -2. You're basically just bringing the variable to the other side. Okay, so the x-intercepts are reflection points to the axis of symmetry, so the vertex is located halfway between them. Whoa, what is that talking about? So what that means is you have wherever the the x-intercepts are, then the axis of symmetry has to be halfway between them. So when are you trying to find a half? What are you dividing by? 2. Now, in this case, because we have 2 values, then you can also think of it like finding the mean or the average. All we're going to do is add the x-intercepts and divide by 2. Okay? Sorry, I shouldn't use blue there. So this is going to be, these kind of combine together to do step 2. Use the x-intercepts to determine the x-coordinate of the vertex. So we're doing the x value first, okay, the x-coordinate. So it has to be, and that's indicated up here as well, right? Those are x's. So you do -4. Now it doesn't matter if you add -2 plus -4, doesn't matter. Okay, divided by 2. So that's -6 over 2, which is -3. And again, even though this seems like simple math, just do it in your calculator and then you won't make annoying mistakes. Okay? The good news is when you have the x-intercepts, so we are going to eventually draw our parabola. So the x-intercepts mean that this parabola has to cross at -4 and -2. So you can see, and you can look between them and find the halfway point. So what's halfway between -2 and -4? You can visually see, oh, it's -3. Okay, but of course we need a point. So we have an x value of the vertex. We need a y. So then to find the y, you're just going to sub the x equals -3 into the equation. And again, decide for yourself how much work you need to show. You can certainly put that in your calculator, but that's 9 minus 18 plus 8. -3 squared is 9. 6 times -3 is -18. So 9 plus -18 is -9. Plus 8 is -1. So now our vertex is -3, -1, and we need the step pattern as well. Okay, you always need 2 pieces of information. So this is step 4. We need the vertex and we need the step pattern. So you again go look at the a value, and our a value is 1. So it's just going to be 1, 3, 5, 7. Okay, so you need to graph the vertex, -3, -1, and then go over 1, up 1. Oh, look, crosses the x-intercept, which makes sense. Over 1, up 3, 1, 2, 3. Over 1, up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make it symmetrical, and then do a better job than me. Something else you can check when you're doing this. So this value, if you remember, is the y-intercept. This won't always work because sometimes the y-intercept is humongous and it won't fit on the graph. But here it will. So the y-intercept is 8. You can check, yep, I have 8. So chances are you've done something correctly. Okay, so let's do one more example. This time it doesn't say, it just says sketch a graph of the function. Now, again, the question will say using x-intercepts, because we are going to look at another way pretty soon when you are not going to use x-intercepts, but you will have to do them both. So make sure if it says using x-intercepts, you do the 4 steps. Okay, so number 1, you find the x-intercepts or factor. So here we have a problem. Now we have this negative out front, but you know that just means that the parabola opens down. So that's not a big deal, but that influences our factoring. Okay, so basically we're common factoring or dividing out the -1. Okay, so -1, I'm going to divide all these terms by -1. And this is as complicated as it's going to get, I promise. So x squared plus 4x minus 12. Okay, so now we have two numbers that multiply to -12 and add to +4. So we have 1 and 12, 2 and 6. So we can get +4 and -12 if we have -2 and +6. That'll get us +4. So similar to the last unit, then we just sort of ignore that -1. In this case, it's going to tell us that our parabola opens down. And we have now +2 and -6. So if you want to, you can put those on there and you know where your parabola should cross the x-axis. And then you're going to, step number 2, we're going to find the x-coordinate of the vertex. So add roots and divide by 2. That's what we're going to do. So now we have our x value. And then we're going to sub x equals -2 and solve for y. Now, this is annoying because now we've got negative, okay? So be careful of that. So we are going to do negative. So -2 squared is 4 times -1 is -4. -4 times -2 is +8 plus 12. So -4 plus 8 is +4 plus 12 is 16. So when we go to graph, we have our vertex and the step pattern. The A value is -1, so it's going to be -1, -3, -5. We're going to go down. So the vertex -2 and 16. So over 1, down 1. Over 1, down 1, 2, 3. And again, there's our y-intercept of 12. Over 1, down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Over 1, down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, oops, sorry. Over 1, down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yay! Over 1, down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so nice parabola, crossed our y-intercept, crossed our x-axis, our x-intercepts. So chances are we've done something right. Okay, so the first two questions in the textbook, they just want you to find the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate and stuff, which is great, but make sure you try some graphs as well. And then I also included a worksheet, okay, with solutions. So give all of this a try, please. And this week is a bit rough, so keep up, okay? And let me know if you have any questions.